I don't know how you spend your weekends, but I love to spend mine perusing. But I always find that I tend to go to the places that seem to know exactly what I'm looking for. And that's a talent, it's a skill, and it's business. And today we are going to be speaking with the woman behind two, at least, of such businesses, Gael Alluard of Lily Plum, of Dwellings, of Mindful Market, of Ashley, you name it, that entire quadrant, it's all about Gael and her husband who have put this together. Gael, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for having me, and it's an honor to be here.
We are so thankful to have you on the Pivot Pioneers in our season 2, where we start to look at people who have been in their individual game now for quite some time. And it's always fascinating to learn how people got to this point. It's easy. I can just walk in the store, find what I want, and walk out. But there's a lot of moving parts that happened in between there. So how did your steps into business begin?
Well, I started out, in business, in the corporate world, really, a long time ago. I graduated from business school, and basically I started my career in sales and a little bit of marketing. I started out working for pretty small companies in the luxury goods industry. So at the time, I was really in sales, but because we didn't have a marketing department, I also had to do some marketing. And it's funny because reflecting on this now, I realized that I was on the other end of what I do now, because now I buy and I put things together, and I was on the selling end and I was helping buyers make selections of products. So I need to come back all the way around. So I did that for a few years, and I really enjoyed actually working for small companies when I started out, because I found like I was able to touch different areas of the business, and it's not so specialized as in when you're working for a big corporation. And also I had more access to top management, and so I was really coached really well at the beginning, just on the basics of business and getting things done. And I got to see a lot of different things and got exposed to a lot of different things. And about 3 years into my career, I decided I wanted to specialize a bit more in marketing. So I went back to school. I was still working full time, and I went back to get a master's in advertising and mass communications. And after that, that's when I made the transition to work for a big corporation. I wanted to try that. I hadn't done it before. And it was the complete opposite of everything I'd done before, because I joined this company that was huge, thousands of employees, and very specific role in marketing. And I was actually working in an international marketing department, and I had a market I had to deal with, which was Canada at the time. So, I learned so much there, because we basically had an in-house ad agency. We had graphic artists and everything. So I learned how to brief the graphic artists on like what assets we needed in terms of advertising. And we were rolling out every week. There was flyers and TV ads, radio ads. So there was a lot of pressure, but it taught me really how to work really quickly, efficiently, and accurately. Because I also had a boss who was not very patient at that time. And if there were mistakes, which would, of course, happen, there was some yelling going on. So, looking back on that, it wasn't like sometimes the most pleasant environment to work in. It was a bit like, a lot of pressure, but I definitely learned a huge amount working there.
Right.
And, being exposed to a huge brand and a big company, and they do things a certain way. So that was the beginning of really my steps into branding. So after that, I moved on in a post where I became a brand manager. I moved back, at the time I was in the US, so I moved back to Barbados and joined a company here where I was a regional marketing manager for a very well-known brand. And they were so specific about what you could or could not do with the brand. And that really taught me how to become very disciplined
Right.
for that. Because basically every ad, every event, every promotion that was running for that brand in the region had to go through me. I had to approve it. I had to say, yes, this is okay, or no, this is, you have to change this because that's not according to brand guidelines.
Right, it has to be touch, feel, texture, tone, everything.
Yeah, everything. And they were very specific. That was a great experience as well. And then my last corporate job before I decided to take the jump to entrepreneurship was another regional marketing manager job. But this time, because it was a new company, it was a big company, but a new company, a new brand. There was a whole exercise of branding that was done. So I think when I joined, there was basically a logo. And then all of that had to be rolled out to like storefronts, vehicles, ads, campaigns, everything. So it was a really exciting time. And, you know, I had a lot of responsibility. And again, I always loved actually working with ad agencies and working with the graphic designers. And I always had an interest in art and design and stuff like that.
And just watching things come to life.
Yeah. And, you know, by then we used to print a lot of like catalogs and stuff. I loved like, you know, getting the piece, like the physical item in my hands.
Nice,
you know?
tactile, and you just flipping and you're like, ooh, yes.
So all of that, you know, I really enjoyed like branding and advertising. I was thriving in that arena. And I got to a point where I have always been like, I've been always very creative and very independent. And I knew from the time I was in business school and even before then that I think I was, you know, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Both my parents are entrepreneurs.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, they're both entrepreneurs. So I grew up with that, around that, you know, working in my parents' businesses and other family members who were also entrepreneurs and working with them, you know, kind of while I was in school and from the time I was in high school. And stuff. So it was just in my blood. So at the time, I decided to take a step back and, you know, I was going through some personal transitions as well. So I took a few months off to just kind of regroup and figure out what I wanted to do next.
Yeah.
And I knew I wanted to start my own business. And I was just thinking about what I could do and where there might be a gap to fill. And not long before I had a baby, and I realized, you know, there were a lot of things, I had to end up bringing in a lot of things into Barbados because there weren't the items I wanted available locally. So I said, you know, I would really love to start a baby store. And that's how Lily Plum was born.
So before we get into the birth of Lily Plum, which you're very happy for, you had pretty much covered what I would call the career gamut of most people, I suppose at a relatively early stage, because at one point you were able to take a step back, you're starting your family now, and here's where you start to recognize there's a gap here. Now, most people would be like, man, I can't get blah, 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 blah. But you're thinking, there's an opportunity here because I couldn't get blah, 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 blah. And I'm sure a lot of people also are looking for things that they couldn't get. So in your mind's eye, what was Lily Plum going to bring to the landscape of Barbados?
Well, it was going to be, and actually, I think every business that we've built has been like that. So whether it's Lily Plum or Dwellings, you know, yes, it's about the product, like giving the customer a really good assortment of product, quality products as well. Because I think there was already in the market, you know, a concentration on more promotional products, like price-driven products. And I wasn't really interested in going there. I wanted to offer something different and bring in some quality products into the market, things that were more trendy, that were more lifestyle. And I want people to come into the store and be excited and be like, oh my God, I want everything, you know? So really, truly, whether it's Lily Plum or Dwellings, it was always about the whole experience. And, you know, that's why like the store was designed a certain way and there was music in the background of the lighting. Like we literally thought about all the different aspects. And I think like neither my husband and I had really, a lot of experience in retail.
Mm-hmm.
So when we started out, I mean, we made some pretty basic mistakes, but I think we went with our gut. Like I really knew, okay, this is what I wanted to feel like. I had the vision. So it's like, okay, I want to feel like this, and I'll figure out how to get there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you look at the Lily Plum experience, as you said, you weren't necessarily going on, can I bring you this cheaper than the next person? Mm-hmm. It's about the experience.
Yeah.
And how has that augured in your favor for, the businesses that have come? Because we can't assume that every business is going to take the same blueprint and say, well, we're going to do this for this, and we're going to do this for that, and we're going to do, it has a different feel.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's worked out really well,
mm-hmm.
I think. And I think one of the biggest compliments that our customers give us on a regular basis, people say, like, gosh, if I can't travel, at least, I can come here and I feel like I've been away. So it was always this.
And we all know what that means in the Barbadian context.
It's like, and even, me, after coming from an experience of shopping somewhere else, wherever it may be, and then walking back through the front door of dwellings, especially, it's kind of like, I don't know what it is. It's just the atmosphere that's been created there.
Yeah.
And I think that's our secret, really, is creating that lifestyle, that inspiration. And I think one of the things that we look at that's very important is that sense of discovery,
mm-hmm.
where every time you visit the store, there's something unexpected. And I think that's what customers love.
It's amazing because you speak a lot about your customers, which suggests to me that feedback is a really, really important indicator for what next for the business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think definitely getting feedback from the customers is very important. We get positive feedback and sometimes we get negative feedback. Mm-hmm. And I think both are very important because you need to take all of it in really and adapt the business and listen to the customers. If you keep getting the same comment over and over, it's like, do you guys carry this, or why don't you carry this, or like you should really do that, and you're like, okay, maybe we should really do that. I have to say, nobody really likes negative comments, right. But after I'm done licking my wounds, usually it kind of motivates me to do better, because I am quite a competitive person. And it's like, I am quite perfectionist. So I like things to be just right. So when, something isn't done, to the satisfaction of the customer, I really feel it. And
you take it on.
Oh, I really want to do better, So yeah. I think that's what drives a lot of our growth. I think, that's a very important of our driver of our growth, but also I spend a lot of time just researching and, keeping on top of trends and saying what's the latest thing and what's new and exciting out there. So
got to keep on top.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Especially in the retail business.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Gail, you've outlined a lot of international training and experience that you've managed to bring back to Barbados and utilize very well with the opening of your own stores. But what about regional expansion? How has that factored into the overall plan of business?
So from the very beginning, when Louis and I launched the business in 2006, we wanted to expand regionally. But it took us 11 years to do that. I think just because, expanding into another country because, you know, in Barbados, okay, it's basically one market. It's a pretty small market. So expanding into like another country, basically, whereas most people outside of the Caribbean would think, oh, it's just the Caribbean, it's the same thing. But no, they're all very different cultures. People shop differently. People, you know, you have all these different cultural backgrounds that affect what people like, the taste. So it took us a long time to take that step and go into Trinidad. So that was the first market we identified, just because it was close, it was English speaking, it was a bigger market.
Yeah.
And we figured, you know, like, okay, this looks like a good place to expand into, and we're not too far away that if we need to get there, it's just a hop and a jump, a 30-minute flight to
Right.
get there. A lot of people thought we were crazy when we did that, because like, it's a huge market.
Yeah.
There's so much competition. People are so aggressive there with competition. I was like, okay, well, you know, we're gonna go, but there's nothing like dwellings, so why don't we go and do it? And we did. So it was really a dream come true, because this is a project that we wanted to do for a long time.
Right.
And we put a lot of work into it. You know, the store over there is absolutely beautiful. It's like, you know, we always say, oh, it's dwellings 2.0. You know, it's not to demean Barbados dwellings, but, you know, we've been in that space now for 15 years.
Yeah.
So there we had like the opportunity to start completely fresh with a whole new space. And that store is huge. It's about 50% bigger.
I was saying, just the space alone would have given you a lot more to work with, so to speak.
Which is great, but in other points, it's also a lot of shelf space to fill. So, but you know, we opened. It was very well received. It was a big risk we took, because we really didn't know what to expect. We thought, okay, it's gonna work. You know, we did our research and stuff, but you really don't know what's going to happen until you actually open the doors and start. So, I mean, it went great at the beginning. It was, people loved the store there, and, you know, we connected with a lot of local designers, and we're doing some good business. About a year into it, though, the Trinidad economy went into a recession. And I guess to do this project, we had taken on a lot of debt, and we had a lot of overheads because we had this huge store.
Yeah.
So the store wasn't really meeting its targets because of the economic environment. So it started getting the pressure started like mounting, and it was going, and we weren't really it wasn't really turning around. And then in early 2020, COVID hit.
Oh, yes.
So that was another layer of stress on top of everything else. So we literally got to a point where we're like, okay, what do we do now? Because when the business had to close, you know, for the lockdown, we're like, okay, well, what do we do now? We were not in a good financial position at all. And, you know, we were considering, okay, what do we do? Do we keep it? Do we close it? Like, we have to change. We have to do some like major changes here for this thing to work. Yeah. Right. So then that's when we started entering into discussions about taking on a local partner. And I'm happy to report that at the end of 2020, we signed an agreement with a local partner, and it's actually been going really well. And I think, you know, they have a business. It's taken a lot of pressure off of us as well, even though we're still the managing partners. Right. It's taken a lot of pressure off of us, because now you have somebody there who has
on the
contacts.
Ground. Yeah.
And what we underestimated when we started the business in Trinidad is that, you know, to have somebody locally who has that contacts, who know how things work, who knows who to call when there's something going on, that is really important. Then on top of it, the other layer is that that partner has part of his business has synergies with ours. Okay. So we've been able to cut back a lot on costs and, you know, share costs and stuff. So that's taken a lot of pressure off the business as well. So actually, this whole exercise in COVID, like, ended up making us stronger like we came out of it actually stronger, and it forced us to do something that we weren't necessarily ready to do, because I think there was fear there. You know, when you own your business 100%, it's always scary to take on somebody else, because you're like, well, what if we don't get along? You know, it's like a marriage, you know. So, but so far so good. Everything's been great.
I think I kind of saw somebody in the corner of my eye sitting forward saying, she came out stronger? Wait, how? How did they come out stronger? So let's talk about that. I mean, COVID, for a lot of retailers, it was almost like the kiss of death, because there was so much uncertainty. How long is this gonna go on? What stimulus packages might or might not be available when we're finished? How do we maintain staff? How long can we maintain staff? All of these questions, pertinent questions, and a lot of us did not have the answers for it because we had never been in this space before. What did you do during COVID that might have set you apart just a little bit from fellow business owners?
Well, I think, as I said, we weren't in a good position at all when we entered the first lockdown, and it was very scary. I think like Louis and I were kind of like a deer in the headlights for the first 10 days. It was like, what are we doing? We don't know what to do. And nobody knew how long it was gonna last. So we kind of pressed pause on everything and kind of regrouped again and said, okay, well, what are we gonna do now? And the first thing is, I mean, we had to cut costs because our overheads were too high. So we had to cut costs. We had to look for a partner if we were going to keep this trend of that business. And that's what we really focused on, you know. And I think we just got a lot more disciplined about how we managed our business. Because when things get really tough, you know, and I think most entrepreneurs, usually you get into business, we're fighters, right? So we're not going to just like walk away and abandon and throw our hands up in the air and just, you know, forget about it. But we just said, okay, what can we do to try and save the situation? And things. So yeah, we had to make some hard decisions and get really disciplined about how we spend our money, where we're spending it, who, unfortunately, we had to let go some of the staff. But, you know, we realized, well, we could operate with less people. So, and just cut back anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. And we were very fortunate that when we came out of it, we were in an industry where people, from being stuck at home, once the doors reopened, people were like going crazy, really. They wanted like furniture, they wanted to upgrade their houses. I've been cooking at home and I don't have a proper pot set. I mean, just you name it. And I think that's globally we've seen that the home retailers have really exploded. The demand has exploded for anything that is home goods. So we were very lucky in that aspect. And it allowed us to kind of replenish ourselves once we reopened. So when the second lockdown came along, I think we were in a much better situation. Because one thing I told myself, is that when we were waiting to reopen the first time, I said, I am never, ever going to be in this situation again. I'm going to make sure we have money saved, that we have a cushion, because if this ever happens again, and it might, because by the time we reopened shortly after, there was already starting to be a second wave in Europe and the US. So I said, well, you know, Barbados is not immune to that, and we might very well be experiencing the same thing. So I said, you know, we need to be really careful, and we need to have a financial cushion so that if it happens again, we'll be in a better situation. And so said, so done.
So said, so done.
Yeah. And I think with the second lockdown, you know, in a way, well, this time we were able to keep all our staff fully employed during.
And that's a huge step, because it did show that something that was learned from the first time helped you out the second time. So you didn't have to make those tough decisions that I'm sure no one likes to make.
No, nobody likes to make that. And, you know, our staff, like some of them have been with us since the beginning. And to send people home, even if it's furlough or it's, you know, temporary, you know that it's affecting obviously their financial situation and their family. So I was glad that the second time around we were able to maintain everybody's, you know, fully employed. And, we just kept going in the background. So we were working from home, and whereas the first time we were like, okay, press pause. We don't know what's happening. And we weren't doing anything. And then when we reopened, we were like scrambling to catch up.
Right.
The second time around, everybody kept working, and we took the opportunity to plan ahead. And, because now as well, what's happened with COVID is that the whole supply chain's been affected.
That's right.
So we're having to place orders a lot earlier, and, all the way down to the holidays and stuff. So we took
Already?
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of vendors wanted their orders in by mid-March.
Mid-March for Christmas?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's new.
Yeah. So, we were always pretty early in doing that, but this time was, we had to get it in by a certain time.
Wow.
So we took the opportunity that we were closed to work on a lot of things like that, a lot of planning, and to refine some aspects of the business that sometimes, we don't have time to do because you're just busy doing other things, focusing on other priorities.
There's one thing that we want to get into, and I want to pay special attention to it in just a bit. But it's one of those things that in our conversation, we recognize that sometimes these pauses, as inconvenient as they are, especially financially and for the flow of business, can actually work in your favor. And I can't wait for people to hear about Mindful Market.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love that you did that I'm not sure a lot of entrepreneurs did is they actually talk about the tough times and they're honest about the tough times. How important is that?
I think it's actually very important because when you look at, the tough times are, you could look at it as successes and then failures, but they're not failures because that is an opportunity to grow. So you really have to look at, get rid of your ego and kind of look at what went wrong and say, okay, well, you know what? We're not going to do that anymore. And then we're going to do this instead. So it allows you to pivot and to grow your business and to get better at what you do. So I think it is actually really important to talk about the tough times. And personally, I don't know any entrepreneur who has not been through tough times.
Are you an entrepreneur if you haven't been?
Yeah. There's always these, months you've had like a terrible month and you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And, but you have to just get back up, brush off and move forward.
Yeah, do more of the stuff that works and try to cut out some of the stuff that's not working.
Yeah, and I would say one very important thing is actually to have data about your business. So maybe that's one thing. Big corporations talk about data a lot, but like smaller entrepreneurs don't really, I think a lot of them realize the importance of data. I think because Louis and I are both from a corporate background, systems are very important to us. So just having the data, because without data, you can't see what's actually working and what's not working.
You can't manage what you can't measure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you can measure truthfully what is happening in your business. Whereas a lot of times, you can see what's moving, what's not moving, why is this not moving, and just like getting really granular about it. And it's not like probably the funnest things. Some people love data.
Sound fun, but
some people love data, but it is a very important thing. Even me as a buyer, when I'm doing buying or when I'm doing marketing, data is very important in marketing nowadays because with all the online advertising, literally you're getting bombarded with data all the time and you need to look at it. You need to see who's looking at my social media pages.
That's right.
How many people clicked on this? How can I get more people to click on that? How many people responded to this ad? All of that is very data driven.
This show is going to have data.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's going to have data. Look for it. It's going to have data.
Yeah,
you need it. Absolutely.
It is a very important thing. And I think small businesses should definitely invest in systems so that they can have the data that they need to make the right decisions.
So even throughout COVID, whereas a lot of people probably, and understandably so, tried to cut back or scale back or get to something that they could actually measure and manage, once again, you managed to expand. And this time around, for those of you who haven't been, go and visit now. Mindful Market. That was a huge surprise to me. One day I walked in and I thought, wait a minute, what is going on here? How did that come into being?
Well, we had always had a very small gourmet section in our kitchen section. It wasn't really doing much. It was just there, kind of thing. And with the first lockdown, when the first lockdown happened, we realized how busy the supermarkets were. And we were like, maybe food is a pretty good category to be in.
Sounds important.
Yeah. Maybe we should have some needs in our business. So, that was one of the drivers that kind of gave us the confidence to expand into that category, because we figured, well, food is always going to do good because people need food, basically.
That's
right. And a lot of people are cooking at home now, and a lot more than they used to. And I think even now that restaurants are open, now that people, I have friends who never cooked before, and some of them will never cook, and they're so happy restaurants are back open. But some of them, they develop their cooking skills, and now they're like, oh, I love to cook, and I know so much about all these kitchen things and food. So I think it's a trend we're going to keep seeing. The other thing that happened is because, I always think of how can we have a different take on things. So of course there's already supermarkets in the market. So how can we be different? How can we stand out? And one of the things that I had embarked on my personal time was getting certified as a health coach. And I was learning a lot. I am still learning a lot about nutrition and just the impact that food has on preventing disease and managing disease and even curing disease sometimes. And not just food and but everything in your environment, what you put on your skin and beauty products and the products you use to clean your home. And there is a general movement globally towards more sustainable items, and people want to know who's behind this brand, who's behind this product and what are they doing? Is the packaging recyclable and all of that? So I'm super passionate about that. And especially now that I have all this information, I was like, okay, I need to share this with people, So that was the take that we took on Mindful Market and how the name came about, because it's about, mind, body, and soul, basically. Right. So it's like you're feeding yourself, but you're also bringing joy to yourself and you're taking care of your health. And, I think our plans for expansion of the brand is going to go far beyond food. So that's how it came into being, really. It was the alliance of again, an opportunity that we saw in the market and, personal passion of mine.
And that's a great way to marry certain things, because oftentimes business has this very stoic, almost hardcore impression, but really passion fuels a lot of what people got into. I mean, passion fuels fashion, it fuels food, it fuels even cars, you know, but it has to start from somewhere, and you use your time, where a lot of people use time to learn things, but you became passionate about something. You thought, well, there's probably a way to bring this literally to market so I can share what I have learned with other people and still find a way to make it marketable. So can we look for a Mindful Market setup in and of its own?
We'll see, but that's yeah, we're already, the thing is, the whole industry of health and wellness it's a huge industry.
It's really big.
And what I love about it is that, you're selling goods, but there's also a sense of purpose behind it. And what we're doing with Mindful Market is every product that we put on our shelf is very deeply researched. It's a bit embarrassing to say that I spend a lot of my weekend hours just lost online, researching companies and just reading up, because I love it, just because it's new to me as well. It's pretty new. like everything that I bring onto a shelf in my info market, I want to make sure that the company that stands behind it is giving us like a quality product. What's the story behind it? Why did it start? What's their packaging? And all those little details, like literally every product I've read about the company and their whole story and what ingredients are in the product.
Wow.
So it's a very intentional business venture, and I really want it to grow organically.
Yeah.
And again, I think it will be driven also by what the market wants, like how customers are responding to it.
Yeah.
As you said, they love the popcorn.
They love the popcorn. That might have its own stand.
Yeah.
You never know. So that'd be fantastic stuff. What do you think, in retrospect, I think that you admit that you have handled the lockdown the second time a little bit better than perhaps the first time. The shock factor definitely was handled a little bit better. But as a business owner, what do you think could have helped you navigate both of those times better for not only you, but your staff?
I think the main thing was really being in a better financial position.
Okay.
To me, that was, and I think knowing that the world isn't going to end and there will be something after the lockdown, and just keep going, keep putting one foot after the other, even if you're not like committing to anything during the lockdown because you don't know what's going to happen when you reopen.
Right.
Take the time to think about your business and really dig deep and see, okay, what is it I can do better? And so you learn from your experience and you come out stronger and better. So I think, going into it, I think is just planning, it sounds a bit pessimistic, but kind of planning for the worst sometimes.
Yeah.
This was like the bottom dropped out and nobody was expecting this.
Correct.
And nobody could plan for it, possibly at least the first time around. But, I think we shouldn't be naive to think this is never going to happen again or that something else can happen.
Absolutely.
I mean, Barbados is also we live in an area of the world that could have a natural disaster. We've seen it happen to neighboring islands. So you have to be prepared as a business for those hard times. And I think you need to put in place like some financial measures that you have that staying power and making sure you're well insured.
Well insured. Shameless plug, well insured. I know that you work with your husband, Louis, in the business, but I need to ask, what is it about women in leadership, and especially with business ownership, that brings something different to the landscape?
Well, I think in general, women just bring a different perspective to things. So if I take like my husband and my relationship at work, he tends to be a lot more logical about things and, make his decisions really based on data pretty much only. Whereas I think women are we have that more like emotional intelligence where we can tap into our intuition and really like dig into that and not, yes, you need the data behind it to make a decision, but you also know sometimes it's like, my gut's really pulling me in this direction.
Right.
And this is something I feel passionate about. And I think women are more open-hearted when it comes to business decisions and to managing staff as well. We know when to be strong and resilient, and we know when to be soft and caring.
Right.
So bringing in that balance, I think that's what women really bring to leadership.
Gail, it's been an absolute inspiration speaking to you today. I feel renewed, and I don't even have a business. Like, I should just get one so I can be renewed and apply some of this golden advice that you have given out today. And thanks for being so open and sharing about your business experience.
Well, thanks so much for having me. And it's been great having this chat with you. And it's really an honor to be part of the Pivot series.
Oh, thank you. The honor was all ours. And I know you all are definitely going to be tuning in to find out more. You're going to look at all these businesses with fresh, new, open eyes and greater appreciation, I'm sure. So make sure you click that like button, that you always stay tuned for what's next, because we will feed you as long as you want to be fed. Thanks so much, and tune in for the next episode of Pivot Pioneers.